Hi there everyone, my name's Luke and welcome to my channel. So a few people requested after my last video where I presented an image of the Cygnus wall, they wanted to see how I processed that image, and that's what this video is going to be all about today. It's going to be showing you how to take a one-shot color dual narrowband image, taken in this case with the 2600MC Pro and an Optolong L-extreme dual narrowband filter, and how to process it into kind of a Hubble / sulfur hydrogen oxygen image. Get that same effect as kind of the images that you sort of see more commonly with mono cameras. So let's just get straight into it now. I'm going to be using a few different tools today, and many of them are already listed down the side here. This is just where I happen to keep shortcuts to them, if you will. You can indeed find any of these underneath Process and All Processors. One more thing that you will need is a set of scripts installing. These are free and it's Easy Processing Suite offered by Dark Archon. You'll be able to find that just by typing into Google the Dark Archon Easy Processing Suite, and it's very easy to install into PixInsight. So let's get started. So I'm just going to initially begin with a STF to get an idea of what we've got. So straight away I can see that there's stacking artifacts. This is basically caused by it being multiple nights of data that I'm combining together, and if it's not clear enough for you there on screen, you can probably see that this is the main part of the image and it's kind of stepped downwards towards a lower signal to noise ratio area. That's where lower amounts of frames have overlapped to create the final image. So I'm going to go right ahead and crop those out, and to do that I'm going to use dynamic crop. I'm just going to drag this box and do perhaps quite a dramatic crop. You wouldn't have to go so crazy on your own images, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I don't want to kind of leave anything in by accident and have it cause problems further down the line. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit apply on that. Now I'm going to perform a step next that I wouldn't want you to do, and indeed I didn't do on my final image, but this is merely to save me time while creating this tutorial, and that's to resample the image. For anybody wondering, it's a good thing to do if you're just practicing on PixInsight, because it keeps things flowing along quite nicely. And so you can find that on Process, Geometry, and Resample. And I'm going to resample this image to 50% of the target size. That'll make it basically take up 1/4 the time to perform any processing steps at all, because if you like, it's decreasing in size in both horizontal and vertical. Alright, now that that's complete, let's move on to the next step. So that's going to be to do a background neutralization. So color calibration, background neutralization. I'm just going to leave this all basic and drag it on. It looks like something's gone wrong. It hasn't. I just need to reapply the screen stretch. Now, the next thing I'm noticing is there looks to be a little bit of a gradient, left to right perhaps, where this part of the nebula looks a little bit brighter than the rest of the dark nebula does. So I'm going to try and get rid of that straight away with automatic background extraction. I'm going to be applying a subtraction, and in this case I'm going to get rid of the background model. If you wanted to identify problems with your own image, sometimes this can be useful to leave unticked, and it'll generate an extra image for you of just the background that got extracted. But in this case I'm just going to leave it all basic and apply it once and see what the effect is. So I'll have to apply another STF after. Now you can see it's not done a great job here. This corner has been way overcorrected. This is somehow almost inverted, if you like. So that's no good at all. I'm going to have to turn down the function degree, so I'll try it on 1. Reapply that STF, and that looks much more promising to me. As you can probably see, if I just tile these windows. Yep, as you can probably see, the image that I've just applied the ABE tool on the left there has highlighted some more nebulosity in this area, and down here a lot of this hydrogen will getting lost in kind of a background fog on this image. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one, and I'm going to instead work solely on this image here. Now we've already done a background neutralization, but before we perform the next step, I'm also going to need to perform a color calibration. So that's found here, color calibration. I'm going to leave everything basic, no need to get too technical with this, and just apply that. There's a degree of green in the background. The famous tool, SCNR, Subtractive Chrominance Noise Reduction. I want it to remove the green, and I'll just drag and drop that. So now this is a color calibrated image, we can move on to the next step, which is performing a noise reduction. And I want to do that while the image is in the non-linear phase, as it's actually really good how this tool works. I'm going to show you. But it only works on linear images. So easy processing suite, and it's underneath easy denoise. So that's right there. It'll come up with a little warning box, that's fine. Select the view, which is that one, ABE, 37 10-minute shots. And I'm not going to mess with any of these settings, I'm just going to literally click Run Easy Denoise, let this pass through, and I'll come back to you as soon as it's finished. Alright then guys, so it looks like the Easy Denoise has just finished. Looks like it took about 4 minutes. So thankfully that resample saved me quite a bit of time there. I'll just go ahead and close these other masks that it created, as we don't need these anymore. And it'll reduce a little bit of clutter. So now hopefully you can see there at home on the screen that this is now a beautifully denoised image. It's done a fantastic job. It's preserved all the detail that I wanted it to, and the background has now become very smooth, and there's no real visually unappealing transitions in the background anymore. So the next thing we're going to want to do now is, just using this screen transfer function from earlier, I'm actually going to use that as my main stretch. So I'm going to open the histogram tool, I'll drag this up and onto this window here, and drag this straight across onto the window I'm working on. Go ahead and reset both. And now this image has been taken from being in a linear state, that is to say it wasn't stretched, to now it's in a non-linear state. So that means the histogram has been altered and it's now a stretched image. And the reason we've done that is because the next phase of processing is going to involve using StarNet++, which is right here. You can also find this underneath processors and I believe mask generation. Yeah, there it is, StarNet. And basically StarNet needs you to provide it with a non-linear image. So I'm going to select to create a star mask, we will need that, and just drag and drop this across. Fortunately StarNet is now integrated into PixInsight, so if you're using an up-to-date version, this should all be present and ready for you to use with no further installation necessary. Alright, StarNet's just got finished. I'll go ahead and close that tool. We're done with it now. As you can see, we're now left with 2 separate images. One of the nebula in the background, completely free of stars. None have been left in. And instead it's extracted all of those and put them into a separate image that is called Star Mask. And yeah, I'm really impressed by this tool. It makes these next processing steps really easy, because you can be quite aggressive with the processing on your nebula, and you can get away with quite a lot that you wouldn't get away with while the stars were present in the image, as they become really rather large and blobby and start to dominate the image and take away from the whole effect. So I'm going to rename this one because I'm actually going to use it for some pixel math later, and I just want it as a simple identifier. So this is going to be called Stars. I'll leave this one as is because I'm actually going to extract these channels out of this now and make another starless image. So to do that, we're going to use Process, Channel Management and Channel Extraction. I'll leave this as R, G and B, and go ahead and drag and drop that onto the starless image. I can minimize this now, as I don't need that one anymore at this point, but I will leave it open just later for comparison if I come back to it. I also won't need to see this right now, so I'll minimize that too. So as you can see, that little process there has left us with a red, a green and a blue channel. And hopefully if we zoom in a little bit at the same point on all three images, you can see the reason why I'm about to do what I'm about to do, which is to get rid of this blue channel. Now, the background on the green channel contains all the same information as oxygen 3 falls between kind of this green and these blue pixels on a color camera. It's naturally a bit of a teal-ish color, which overlaps quite well between this sensor spectral response. It contains all the same data, but the blue channel is quite a lot noisy because there's half as many pixels taking on that data. So I don't want to include that noise in my final image, and I'm going to make another blue channel synthetically by combining this red and green together with custom weights. So to do that, I'm going to get both on screen at once. Indeed, I'll have a preview of this, but I'm going to open the histogram tool, make sure we're working on the blue image, sorry, the green image. I'm losing myself here. I hope you'll forgive me. The unscripted nature of these videos means that some level of mistakes is inevitable, I guess. And I'm going to open a preview. So we've got both viewable on screen now, so I can see on the left side here the natural red image, and on the right side a preview of the green channel. I've got the histogram tool open and I'm ready to begin stretching this green channel to make it somewhat visually represent this red, or as close as it can. That's going to be the aim of this next step. So I need to bring a stretch on the midtones there to make those quite a lot brighter. And as you can see, the background here is way too light compared to this red channel. So I'm going to drag up the black point slider and make that somewhat match again. Doesn't have to be perfect just yet, but that's definitely closer than it was before. If I just toggle back and forth, you can see it's now more closely representing that red channel. So I'll apply that, reset both, and just make another adjustment. So again, a little bit on the midpoint. If I drag that to the left, it's going to brighten the midtones. Just a little. Kind of this section of nebula here is looking quite similar now in terms of brightness. And I'm just going to drag up again that black point slider to make the darker parts of the nebula sort of match, or at least as close as they reasonably can, without really breaking down the data too much. So I think about there, and I'm going to be satisfied. These sorts of regions of nebula here are looking quite similar, and this is looking quite similar also. So I'll go ahead and hit apply on that. Now I can close this preview, and just looking at these two now, it looks like obviously along the face of the wall where there's a lot of hydrogen data, it's quite a lot brighter there. I could probably bring that up by making a curves adjustment. If I just open the curves tool with green selected, another fresh preview, and the aim of this basically is going to be to bring up this midpoint, and at the same time, once that's finished, drag this curve into kind of a gentle S by bringing down the shadows end of the histogram. So I'm not really looking at what I'm doing with this hand, I'm just kind of paying attention to what's happening on the screen, and at that point I think I've got it at that little bit closer than it was before. If I just go back and forth there, you can probably see the image, the contrast improves and it more closely matches that red. So that's great. I'll go ahead and apply, and now close the curves. Close the preview, and the next step is going to be to get back a blue channel that I can use. So to do that, we're going to again use pixel math. So sorry, I think this is the first time using it, my apologies. It's important that you open up the destination box here and click to create a new image. You don't want either, or any of these images for that matter, overwriting. You want to create an entirely new image. Don't matter about the identifier right now. And to get this next image, we're going to use weights on these two channels. So that's going to be shown by using an expression. So it's going to be R to tell it we're going to use this channel, times by 0.6, so we're going to get 60% of this red channel, plus the green channel, so that's G, times by 0.4. So we're going to use 40% of the green, 60% of the red, adds up to 100% total, you know. So we're not going to get any bonus brightness on the image. We want it to actually match the same brightness as these two, basically, and this will do that if I just hit apply. So now we've got this third channel, image 16 it's called right now, but I'm going to rename that to be B for blue. And hopefully you can see it matches those other two quite well. Now the next step is going to be to recombine these images in the right order to make what is kind of an approximation of an SHO/Hubble palette image. And to do that, I'm actually going to want to use this red channel as a luminance channel. You can do this without, but I always find better results using the cleanest channel and actually just trusting the fact that you can use that as luminance. And the tool I'm going to be using is L-RGB combination. So I'm going to point this to the right file. So I want to use red as luminance, red also in the red channel. I want to use the blue channel in the green right here, so I'm going to type B in there, and oddly enough I want to use the green channel in the blue. This should make sense in a moment when I hit apply. So I'm going to go ahead and apply global with chrominance noise reduction applied too. That should reduce any additional noise that could get injected at this point. And hopefully now I can close these three. I'll just leave them minimized for the moment, but at least get them off the screen. So now we have a starless kind of Hubble approximation image. It still needs work, but at this point I'm going to call it what it is. So it's starless, just for later identification. I'll make it a touch bigger and expand the window to match. And now we can start working on this using the curves tool. All the rest of the image adjustments can also be made basically just using curves. It's quite a robust little tool. So I want a preview of this and we can go ahead and start working. So you can see this is a bit too kind of yellow, like an insipid yellow color. So I want to add more red. So I'm going to do that by selecting the red part, the red channel, bring up the midpoint of it and bring down the shadows of it. So you see if I don't do that, you can always add and remove pips on the histogram, by the way, by just right clicking them. If I don't do that, you see the background also finds itself being boosted in the red channel, and we don't want to boost the background, we just want the midtones. So the midtones and to some degree the highlights, should I say, for accuracy. So I'm going to instead drag this back down until the background looks like it's gone back towards a space color, a black, if you will. If you just cycle back and forth, hopefully you can see the change that that's had. It's taken it from being kind of almost a green yellow to much more of a golden red, I would say, and that's great. So we can go ahead and apply that. The next channel I want to take a look at and boost is going to be the blues, as you can almost not see them. In fact, it could nearly be mistaken for grey at this point. So I'm going to boost the mid and drag down the black point. Hopefully you can see if I left it too high, the entire thing gets boosted. Too low, and it actually starts biasing towards the other two channels, the red and the green. So we kind of end up with this mucky, brownish, greenish color in the background. So I'll just do this for you right now, and you can see, hopefully live, just how fast this sort of adjustment is. Yeah, that's looking quite good. I'll just cycle back and forth and make sure I'm satisfied. Yep, we've had the right effect there, so it's boosted the parts that I wanted, all this nice blue oxygen signal. I'm going to go ahead and apply that. It's really easy to get carried away at this point and take the image, I would probably say, way too far, but at this point it's really up to you what you want to do with your image. It's your image, and at the end of the day you should do whatever makes you happy with it, because it's your data. Now, just to see the effect of any changes I'm making, I'm actually going to boost the saturation at this point. So I'll take it quite aggressively up. You can see now this is making it more apparent, once I've reset that, there's actually kind of a magenta hue to all of this. Excuse me, sorry. Now, to get rid of that, there's a handy script installed with PixInsight that's actually designed for use on stars, but it works just great also on background like this. So if I use script, utilities, and correct magenta stars, I'm just going to leave this as is and execute it on the starless image. You can hopefully see the effect that that's had. If I just undo and redo, it's taken it into a much finer state of color calibration, I would say. Now I think it's lacking a little bit of contrast as this image, so I'm going to apply a transformation to the curves on R, G and B all together. So again, a preview, drag up the midpoint and back down the shadows. You can probably see that that's had the desired effect right away. It's really making the image pop out more, if you will, for want of a better word. And I'm satisfied at that I will go ahead and apply it. I think perhaps it could take even another step of that. Perhaps a little more gentle this time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and reset the curves there again. I think I am basically done now with the curves adjustments. The final sorts of things I'd like to do is maybe highlight some of this dark nebular area here, and indeed these sections around the wall itself. There's a great tool in PixInsight for that we can use in a moment, but before I get to that, I would also like to accentuate the detail along the edge of the wall right here. So to do that, as this is the brightest part of the image, luckily, and that is also the part I want to accentuate, a range mask would be a good idea here. So you're going to find that at Process, Mask Generation, and Range Selection. So I'll open up a real-time preview for this, and it's going to appear to be completely white. I'm just going to drag along the lower limit until just the brightest part of the image. So of course, further that you move it to the right, just the absolute brightest parts of the image will be shown. I think around about there looks quite good. That gives the rough shape of the wall. If I just move this to one side for a moment, you can see hopefully the parts I'm wanting to accentuate. It's probably quite a pixelated mask at this point, so I want to apply a small amount of smoothness to it too, but not too much that the mask becomes blurred, and any sharpening effects, which I'm going to do, would also become applied to the nebula around it, which never leads to a nice effect. So small amount of smoothing, and that looks about right to me. I'll go ahead and hit apply, and it's going to create that mask for me now. Hopefully you can see what I'm talking about there. It is smoothed, but not to a dramatic degree. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that across and put it next to the identifier on this image. The mask is now applied, as you can see. All the background is red and covered up, and just those brightest parts are ready to be worked on. And I'm going to work on them using convolution and unsharp mask. So again, the most useful tool perhaps in PixInsight here, the real-time preview. I'll drag a little preview box around the parts I'm actually working on, or at least most of them. And if I just untick and retick the effect, you can see it is having an effect. This edge is becoming more defined, and so is this here. I'll maybe boost it slightly by increasing the standard deviation. Yeah, that's having quite a nice effect now, I'd say. If I just cycle back and forth a few more times, hopefully that's apparent to you too at home. I'm happy with that effect. I'll just hit apply, close this tool and the preview, and indeed the mask. And at this point, this is a shareable image. Lots of people like starless images. In my case, I would like to put the stars back in, so I'll just open those a moment to kind of match the saturation of the rest of the image, and to create something that's gone on here that usually occurs with a star net. Some of these stars have gone ever so slightly green during removal, so I'll just quickly apply an SCNR and a little bit of saturation to this image to boost the colour in those stars. That'll do nicely, I think. And finally, let's put these two together for the end of the tutorial. So that's going to be done using Pixel Math. I'll clear away this previous Pixel Math expression, and to do this it's just going to be starless plus stars, and it'll add them both together when I hit apply. And that leaves you there with basically how I got my final image of the Cygnus wall. I hope that this has helped some of you at home, and maybe the slightly slower pace of today's tutorial has possibly helped some people, I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments down below if you liked this sort of approach or maybe a faster one. I realise everybody's time is indeed valuable, but some of these things perhaps are better spent just a moment longer on when it's a semi-complicated subject like this. I hope that this helped some of you anyway. It's always been a pleasure making things like this and sharing things I've learned, and if it did help, please consider dropping a subscribe, like, comment. I love to see it all, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you all next time. So thank you very much indeed for watching, and clear skies.